Well, it's just after 12:30, so we might as well get started. There's a fair few people on, so if you if you need to ask a question, just put it in the chat box and we'll attend to them at the end. But I want to say that we're really excited to have you here today. I've known Zrinka now probably for nearly a year.
Yeah, it's been about that.
Yeah, and it's been pretty fun. So Zrinka is the managing director of Great Place to Work in Australia, which is part of a global organisation, which is a Great Place to Work Institute. And they're a leading global provider of workplace assessment, benchmarking, and optimization services to help build high trust organizations, improve business performance, and definitely provide opportunity for external recognition, which in turn helps your talent, helps engage talent, helps invite talent come to your business. Zrinka does a lot of work with very, very different industries, and her team is amazing. They would highlight areas that you might need to improve or work on, and Sterling can definitely help you find those specialists as well. So we're a good team, and we know a fair few people out there. Now more than ever, it's really important to have an engaged workforce. I think that what we've been going through the last couple of months has really highlighted to a lot of people what it means to have an engaged workforce. And people working remotely, their cultures have changed and things have changed a lot. So coming out of this COVID situation, it's really important for you to understand what the levers are and what you need to do to get your business back to performing what it was. So I'll hand it over to Zrinka. She's going to talk a lot more about what they look at, where they measure, and then what happens during that process. So over to you.
Great. So thank you so much, Emma. Thanks to everyone who joined the session today. We have been working with Sterling for about a year now, and a large proportion of our team actually came via Sterling, and we're very happy for this great partnership we have, because we really feel like we are on the same wavelength, understanding that people are important to organizations and how important that fit is. Which is a very large part of the great organizations. So when Emma and I actually planned this session, the world looked very different to how it looks today. And in preparation for the slides today, I was actually really surprised how, retrospectively looking at the findings of the 2019 study, how companies were actually moving into the direction for all the things that they needed to actually combat the situation we are in as best as possible. So I have some slides to share with you. I'll be honest, I get confused as to what program is used which way. Okay, can everyone see my screen? It
Yes.
is a picture of me.
It's a lovely picture.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to going back to looking like that after this is over. So to tell you a little bit about Great Place to Work, as Emma said, we are part of a much larger network. We are part of Great Place to Work Institute, which operates in over 54 countries. And we look at very similar things across all those territories. We survey thousands of companies and millions of employees every year, and we want to have a look at what keeps people engaged, how things change in the market, and how things change from geography to geography, so that we can use that information and share it with our clients to help them stay ahead of the track and attract the best talent to their organization, retain the best talent in their organization, and benefit from other factors that will increase their productivity. We are very dedicated to our mission, which is to build a better society by helping companies transform their workplaces. When you think about it, we spend so much of our time in the workplace, and we should enjoy it. We shouldn't be spending the majority of our waking hours and the majority of the week doing something we don't enjoy. That's not good for our health, it's not good for our families, our society, and the world we live in. So we're trying to increase that satisfaction as well. So when we work at organizations, we look at business outcomes, and the outcome that we really want to affect is the talent. So attraction, retention, absenteeism, increase in productivity, and so on. And the tools that we use predominantly are the employee engagement assessment tool. So we know people are engaged when they say to us that they want to stay at the organisation for a long time, they see a long-term future for themselves at the organisation, they strive for the organisation's success, and they have many positive things to say about that organisation. So there are two tools that we use to assess organisations. One is an employee survey, so we understand the world that the employees live in. And secondly, there is a culture audit, which helps us understand the policies, practices, and so on that the company has employed. So then we are able to look at the similarities and differences between the company's intent and the employee's experience and offer advice in how to improve that. There are many reasons to look at employee engagement. You know, most fundamentally, a lot of times we get asked is, what is the return on investment here? And we'll look at the cumulative stock market returns for the companies that are featured on the best places to work lists and compare that to market average, which is the yellow bar. That's actually showing growth and changes for the Russell 3000 as opposed to the red line, which is showing us the stock performance for the best places to work. So they definitely do outperform the market. In Australia, what has and I believe will continue to be a large focus for organisations is attraction and retention. So we want to look at the differences in voluntary turnover rates for employees and senior leaders in companies that have high engagement, so engagement over 80%, versus market averages that are available through different studies. So for instance, if you look at the first bar, manufacturing and production, in companies that have employee engagement above 80%, we can see voluntary turnover on average is about 5.8%, as opposed to the market average of 10.5%. And then when you look at some other areas such as professional services, the gap is much larger. You think about all the time and effort that is required to find people, onboard them, get their output up to a level where they are positively contributing to the organisation. Retention of employees takes a lot less effort than having to find new people. There are some great things we see in companies that are best workplaces and workplaces that have employee engagement above 80%. So they have a strong business and financial performance. They have great brand recognition because their employees go the extra mile for their customers. They're proud to talk about their organisation. They have greater rates of attraction and retention of talent. Increased innovation, because we see collaboration amongst teams and camaraderie amongst employees is high. There's a great exchange of ideas. These organisations are open to ideas. They seek them. They motivate employees to think outside the square. There's an improvement in customer satisfaction and something that we all need right now, an increase in agility and speed when changes come about. So as we go along, I will talk to you about some of the work we're doing during the COVID crisis and some of the results that we have seen, preliminary results we are seeing from organisations so far. So every year we publish the Best Places to Work study. The current edition that is out is the 2019 edition. It was published late August last year. And the 2020 study will be published on the 5th of August this year. So we are still in the middle of doing that research. So we don't have study research to share with you today. However, we have research from last year, and it's actually been quite interesting. Last year, we saw a very large shift and focus around digitalization in organizations. And I really believe that focus has been why so many organizations have done so well during this crisis. So we are running a rolling survey for employees and the open market to tell us on a weekly basis how they feel about their workplace during the crisis. And what's been really great to see is that companies have really embraced the digital platforms they have available to them in order to communicate to employees and with employees. So a lot of things that happened over the last 12 months were in the right direction. But just to give you some insight on the 2019 study, we had 163 companies take part in the research. That was just under 85,500 employees in Australia that we surveyed from 38 different industries. Information technology and software tend to still outweigh the best places to work lists globally. But it was actually really pleasing to see two new industries come into the list last year. One was government, with Service New South Wales being named one of the best places to work. And the other one was a bank. The first time we have had a bank take part in the study and make the list, that was UBank. So I have been with Great Place to Work for just under 13 years now. Information technology, both on the software and the hardware side, have dominated the list for all that time. I'm not surprised. It's the industry that has for the past 20 years really felt the pressure of a shallow labour market, and they had to be the first to really think outside the square and engage the engagement elements to attract and retain the best talent. Sometimes they look for talent that essentially doesn't exist yet. They need people to solve problems they don't even know that they have and their customers have. So IT companies have always been very strong in this because they have been fighting the talent war for the longest from the industries over the last couple of decades. What do the average companies look like? So this is statistics on the 50 best companies last year. We can see a large proportion of the employees are still full-time. It was actually interesting to compare this to figures from 2018, and there has definitely been an increase in casual employment and a decrease in part-time employment. So full-time employment amongst the 50 best remained the same, but we saw a larger portion of employees move from part-time to casual work. We can see that the 50 best companies on average had a revenue growth of 16.5%, which is really great returns when compared to the market. Age of employees, very much what you would expect to see, because we know from ABS data, this is a similar pattern of our population pools. The majority of employees are aged between 26 and 44 years of age. Over 55 category is shrinking and has been shrinking over the last couple of years that we have seen in organisations. Years of tenure, so under 2 years. That's been interesting because this is telling us that the largest proportion of employees have been with the company for under 2 years, when in fact the average tenure at these organisations is around 4 years. So these companies are hiring and hiring and hiring employees. That's why the majority of their employees have been with the company for less than 2 years. So I want to share some insights with you from last year and how that looks in the current situation that we are in. So as I mentioned, we do 2 assessments for organisations. One is the employee survey, and that particular survey is called the Trust Index. The reason being is that at the heart of the Great Place to Work model is the concept of trust, and that organisations need to build trust with employees in order for employees to build engagement with the organisation. So the employee survey tells us very much about the world that the employees live in and how they feel about their workplaces. The culture audit helps us understand the intent. So we ask questions around how your organisation, for instance, hires people. What is the selection criteria? How does your organisation listen to people, seek feedback and input, and so on? How does your organisation develop people and recognise people for their work? So it gives us an insight from, I guess you could say, 2 sides of the coin. So one of the statements in the Great Place to Work survey is taking everything into account. I would say this is a great place to work. So the survey itself has 58 statements. 57 of those 58 statements are asking you about fragments of your workplace experience and are essentially all asking you, is this a great workplace? The last question that we ask in the survey is taking everything into account. I would say this is a great place to work. And it's one of the statements that had quite a shift in correlations over the period of 2019 study. So historically, the most correlated to taking everything into account was the statement, "This is a fun place to work." However, in 2019, we saw the data shift to another statement, which was, "I'm proud to tell others I work here." So what we saw was a great shift in not only the attitude of the workplace, but now people feeling that they have more ownership of their work and pride in that work. So, you know, companies have really been focusing on creating that link between what employees do and how it links into the overall goals and strategy of the organization, and helping people understand the important role that they play in the organization. Also, another statement we were quite interested in is, why do people want to stay at an organization? So I want to work here for a long time. Historically, we have seen a strong correlation between that and we're all in this together. So that team spirit aspect of workplaces, camaraderie aspect of workplaces, and so on. Last year, though, a large shift to the statement, "This is a psychologically and emotionally healthy workplace." So for employees who felt like their workplaces were psychologically and emotionally healthy, they wanted to stay longer at those organizations. Not surprising, I actually have something else on this particular point in a couple of slides' time, so I will circle back to this particular issue. With the culture audits, so this tells us about the policies and procedures in organisation, the way things are done, and so on. We have definitely seen a huge shift in the way and the role HR plays in the organisation. So a move away from being transactional and a risk mitigating role to definitely being a role that's building capability, building social conscious of the organisations as well. And this has been great to see, because people are usually the largest resource companies have at their disposal, and the largest resource that they employ, the resource that requires the most funding. And your corporate strategy should be aligned to your people's strategy. So it's great to see that HR is starting to play a strategic role in organisations, as they should. A very strong trend was seen in the way companies are looking at learning and development programs. So traditionally, learning and development, so when I say traditionally, I'm going back 12, 13 years to when I started at Great Place to Work. We saw a lot of learning and development very heavily focused to outside institutions. So organisations funding university degrees, short courses, and traditional institutions such as universities, TAFE, and so on. Now we're seeing companies looking at ad hoc elements and how they can bring L&D programs to every day. So a lot of mentoring programs in place, a lot of coaching programs in place for organisations. A lot of companies looking at what internal resources they have that they can share. So lunch and learn sessions are very popular again, people sharing their skills and their knowledge with their colleagues, and making learning and development far more tangible. A huge uptake on learning and development programs and tools such as Lynda and the LinkedIn programs and so on. However, low utilization on those, which I think is something that might have been a focus now that people are working from home, is really increasing that utilization of the great resources that they have on hand. We have also seen a huge increase in companies looking at bottom-up communication, feedback mechanisms, making companies more collaborative. And also, this is so important for innovation in organizations. So a lot of companies are spending a lot more time at the front line, getting information from the front line, making senior leadership visible at the front line, improving all those mechanisms, having internal competitions around innovation, fresh ideas into the organisation, getting involvement from all levels in the organisation for people to give feedback to senior leadership. And this is something that has worked so well over the last 2 months. As I mentioned, we have a running survey going to help companies through this process, and we are offering that complimentary. there is an open question around what has worked really well during this crisis. And so many comments from so many different organisations have been about the communication their senior leadership is sharing. So I would have to say vast majority of organisations are doing the following. They're sending daily videos of the senior leadership team giving updates about different aspects of the organisation, different aspects of where the company is at, uh, the planning for the future you can do in this situation, the COVID response the organisation has. This keeps senior leadership present and visible to your team. So video communication has been a great tool. A lot of companies utilising WhatsApp. So quick messaging to the company, quick messaging to the team, really, really ensuring that your team feels comfortable with the communication that they need and information that they need, feel secure about where the organisation is going. And a lot of employees have been so um, vocal and grateful about all the communication that is happening in the organisation, which is really great to see. This isn't the first crisis we have worked through. We have had, you know, obviously a global pandemic hasn't happened in a very long time, not in our career life anyway. But we had the global financial crisis, which is something that I can reference back to. And communication was so incredibly poor during that time. So it's great to see that that has improved over time. Technology has enabled it to improve as well, but you can have all of these tools and resources. Utilizing them is what's so important. So it's great to see that that is happening. And lastly, huge focus last year on companies redesigning wellbeing offerings and becoming a lot more holistic. So again, historically, wellbeing was around gym memberships being subsidized by the organization, fruit baskets being delivered to the office once a week and so on. Whereas in the last, now 24 months, we have seen a huge shift in companies offering wellness initiatives that are not only physical, but mental well-being, financial well-being, really resonating with the fact that their employees have issues that they deal with outside of the workplace, and anything that the company can do to alleviate stress is a win-win for both the organisation and for the individual. At the end of the day, we perform best when we feel best. So it's great to see companies really put in a lot of initiatives. Counselling sessions funded by the organisation are pretty much standard across the board. Prior to the government putting in some statutory requirements around domestic abuse leave, we saw some of the best companies have already been doing such things for several years now, really looking after their vulnerable and most disadvantaged employees and looking at ways that they can offer support. It's something that companies have done quite a good job of during this time as well. Team leaders really spending time to talk to their employees and their team members around how they are feeling, how they're feeling today. You know, just out of 10, how are you feeling today? What are your concerns today? What's causing you stress today? Really helping people understand that there is a team here for them, even though they may not be physically together. Physical well-being is one of the things that employees have told us has not been fantastic during this time. Pretty much, indefinitely to us feels that overnight we went from, see you on Monday has turned into see you maybe in June and maybe in July. We all went home one Friday, and from the next week we were all working at home. And while companies were busy scrambling to ensure comms were in place and all other elements were in place to keep companies going, something that we've forgotten is that a lot of our team members don't have a study. They're working from their dining table. So do they have the right equipment to do their job? Do they have a chair they can comfortably sit on at home? Do they have the right cables? Do they have a mouse? Do they have the keyboard at home? Will they perform better if they have multiple screens, or can they work from their laptop? So that's what we have started seeing in the last week, companies retrospectively having those conversations and looking at what resources they can deliver from the office to their employees at home, so that they can be a little bit more comfortable in the environment that they are working in. So that brings me to the end of my talk. I don't know how to stop sharing. Oh, stop share. Well, that's easy. All right, great.
Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to ask Zrinka? You can pop it in the chat box if you like. You can put curly ones in there. You've seen it all.
Oh, unfortunately, yes.
Oh, but if you do have any questions, like, yeah, just pop them in the chat box. But Zrinka, one thing that really stood out to me definitely was I love the shift towards having more of a holistic approach to looking after your people. That it just that's everything to HR. I think that that seat at the table for HR is so imperative, and it needs to happen. Sam P asked, are there any different kinds of surveying during this time, and will there be 2 kinds of data released?
I'll get to Sam's question. I want to go back to what you just said, Emma. You know, we expect our employees to look after the company every day, and they do by doing the best that they can and putting in effort and bringing their talents into the organisation. It is a really nice thing to feel supported by the organisation in times that may not be work related. So that's why this holistic approach is so important in caring for our people, especially in, you know, certain industries that we know that some really worrying statistics around suicide and mental health are prevalent. So it's very important to look after our people. So Sam had a question, well, any different kind of surveying during this time? So we currently have 2 surveys running. One is the tail end of the best places to work study. There is another survey that we are doing, which is more COVID centric, to help organisations who may not have the capability to survey their employees, and we're very much looking at different elements of the workplace experience and what employees feel that they have a good handle on and what they don't. Incredibly surprising for the best places to work survey has been the positive response. Even for organisations that have taken part in the survey in previous years to their results now. The survey itself looks at elements that are important for an employee to be engaged. So around being respected, having a fair workplace, feeling that they are communicated to. It's been great to see that those results have been steady, because they are fundamental building blocks of any organisation. And they work with organisations that have dispersed employees all over the world. So you could say that is like having, you know, 99% of your workforce now working from home and not being physically connected. So it's interesting to see that there seems to be very, very little difference in how employees were feeling 12 months ago, and as opposed to how they are feeling now. So we are releasing weekly updates on the COVID survey, how people are feeling, things that have changed, and you can find that on our website. www.greatplacetowork.com.au. There is a tab we simply called COVID-19 for use of reference, and we put new material there every week as it is coming out.
There's a couple of other questions here.
Yes.
So Natalie asked, have you seen any work on engagement and morale while employees are working from home? Any best practice ideas?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of keeping your employees abreast of the situation, keeping them up to date, making yourself very visible. As I mentioned, those things, video communication, WhatsApp groups are great because it's instant messaging. Those have been really great. But we've seen some really creative things that are helping people feel connected to their team. So we have one organisation that one team has done kind of a MTV style welcome to my crib video for the whole team, you know, just sharing the workplace that you are in right now with your team. Fancy hat Fridays, so a great place to work. We have a theme for every day, but Friday's fancy dress. So it's just, you know, something funny.
We did pub trivia last Friday, and I think I was in charge of the questions, but they were a little bit tough. So
Yeah.
if anyone's got any good like club trivia questions, send them through.
Yeah, it's important to keep things like serious and lighthearted at the same time. So any fun initiatives you can do with your team are so important because it helps them keep connected. So one of our employees that came through, Emma, was Emily Campbell. Last week she was supposed to have her graduation, but because of the situation we are in, her graduation was postponed. So we didn't tell her, but the rest of us dressed up in our academic gowns on Friday. And we held a fake, the only graduation ceremony she's having this month. So, just something fun like that to do with your team to keep things, to keep people connected and lighthearted definitely helps.
There's another question from Catherine. So are non-registered GPTW companies, although would like to be, able to take part in the COVID survey?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you go to our website and you go to that COVID tab, there is a link you can press. It will direct you to send an email to us that you are interested in that survey, and then we will send you the information and the survey questions. As I said, it is complimentary. Surveying is what we know, is what we can offer organisations during this time. So definitely do send us an email, and we'd love to get back to you.
Fantastic. And Zoe's asked, so thank you for providing such valuable insight. And her question is, what trends, practices, new way of living, etc., do you see forecast post-COVID-19?
I can only offer you some insights from my observations and conversations we have had over the last month. I was telling Emma, my sister works in the movie industry, and I definitely see a shift in the way her work has been done, and quite possibly how similar industries will work. You know, they have tended to bring people in from all over the world to work on projects, but they've realized now that they don't really have to do that. It's working fine, working from home. Over the last couple of years, I've heard many organizations say that there is no way their company could work with people working from home, therefore they can't offer flexibility. I think they've just been proven wrong. And that sometimes flexibility is the only option that we have. So that'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the way work is done, how companies change their insights around workplace, the physical workplace that we have, and what can and can't be done. Although one of my clients said to me yesterday that he can't imagine anyone voluntarily wanting to work from home after this for a long time. So it will be interesting to see.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
And Liz has asked, so voluntary turnover, given the economic impact of COVID-19, will probably not be a problem. Yes, but presenteeism is likely to be. So what can businesses do based on the Great Place to Work research to ensure the strive factor that will be essential for business performance and survival?
Yeah, I think it's really, it has always been important, now more than ever, to ensure your employees know the vital role that they play in the organisation, how the job that they have aligns to the team's goals, to the organisation's goals, that they all know that the company needs them, and that's why they are employed, because they play a large role. I think that's something that is going to have a huge impact on engagement, not only during this period, but after this period, because even if I go back to the last global crisis we had, which was the financial crisis, I can see some companies making the same mistakes that happened then. And I can see other organizations handling it really well, that came out stronger than ever after the financial crisis, which definitely shook them up. And organizations that have been very open with employees were people-centric, around people matter. Their physical, mental well-being matters to our organisation. Kept people informed, kept them feeling like they are still part of the organisation's conversation. They definitely came out stronger. Nobody remembers what you did for them during the good times. People remember what you did during the bad times. Yeah, and bad times are now.
Yep.
And one day, hopefully soon, we will all be going back to our offices and all back to our normal lives. children back at school and, you know, being able to visit our grandparents and so on. But it's usually in that period that trauma comes out.
Yeah.
So be prepared for that as well.
Yeah.
And still keep your communication levels high, keep your employees feeling like they are part of the team, part of the conversation, that they matter. Great time to get input from team members about ideas on what things can change in the future, what things can change now. Get them to really feel like they are part of the solution to get the organization out of this.
Absolutely, because it's so hard. Like I wrote a post the other day. It's really easy to move to the triaging, isn't it, of policy, procedure, and regulation, and keeping everybody tight in that respect. But you know, saying that they need to be part of the conversation, they need to be part of the solution, and
Yeah.
really bringing people back to their purpose and understanding why they're actually part of the organization and what their role does in part of in the organization too is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if they're not feeling important right now, as soon as the labor market opens up again, they will go look for an organization where they do feel important. You
Yeah.
know, this is the conversation we usually have about millennials and whatever the next generation is in the workplace around, oh, they want to change jobs, they want to do this, they want to hop and change, there's no stability. The only reason there is no stability is because they haven't found meaning in their work. And that's a generation that wants meaning. They want to feel important. They want to know the role that they play, the vital role that they play, that they're actually making a difference. This will happen with everyone in the workplace post this. They will want to look for an organization that's going to look after them like they look after the organization.
Absolutely. Well, there's no more questions at the moment, but I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining in today. It was great to have you here. We will have a recording of this session. So I will make sure that that link goes out, or we will make sure that that link goes out shortly. So if you want to share it with anyone, if you want to get in touch with Zrinka, you can go through me, or you can connect with her. She's very fun to talk to, and she's always welcoming. So thank you so much for today. We really appreciate it, Zrinka, and we look forward to talking to you all really soon. Take care in these times, and we will see you in a few weeks.
Thank you everyone for joining today. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.